When Sarah Matthews decided to test a Scottish Highland Castle guard's patience, she thought his ceremonial sword was just another tourist prop. But her attempt to touch the ancient weapon led to a moment that would silence hundreds of visitors and teach everyone an unforgettable lesson about respect. Edinburgh Castle rose majestically against the morning sky, its ancient stones painted in soft golden hues by the early autumn sun. The historic fortress, perched high above Scotland's capital city on its volcanic crag, had witnessed centuries of history, from royal ceremonies to fierce battles. Today, it stood as a testament to Scottish heritage, drawing visitors from every corner of the globe to marvel at its imposing presence and timeless grandeur. At the castle's ceremonial entrance, Sergeant William MacPherson stood vigilant, his 6'2" frame cutting an impressive figure in the traditional Highland Guard uniform. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from. And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. The ancient Claymore sword at his side wasn't just for show. It was a carefully preserved weapon that had been passed down through generations of castle guards, each one sworn to uphold the honor of protecting this sacred piece of Scottish history. The sword's polished steel caught the morning light, its ornate hilt bearing the carefully maintained engravings of clan symbols that dated back to the Jacobite era. The crisp September breeze carried the distant sound of bagpipes from the royal mile below, mixing with the excited chatter of tourists gathering at the castle gates. William had served as head guard for 15 years, earning the respect of both his fellow guards and regular visitors who recognized the dignity of his position. His weathered face and steady gaze spoke of unwavering dedication to duty, while the 3 medals pinned to his formal jacket testified to his distinguished service in the Royal Regiment of Scotland before taking up his current post. Today marked the beginning of the Highland Festival Week, drawing larger crowds than usual to the castle grounds. Tour guides led groups through the cobblestone pathways, recounting tales of ancient Scottish kings and fierce clan battles. Children pointed excitedly at William's impressive uniform, the deep green and navy tartan kilt, the polished silver buttons of his formal jacket, and the ceremonial claymore that had protected the castle gates for over 3 centuries. The morning air was thick with anticipation as visitors from across the world gathered to experience one of Scotland's most beloved cultural celebrations. Among the gathering crowd, phones emerged to capture photos of the impressive scene. Most visitors maintained a respectful distance, understanding the solemnity of the tradition they were witnessing. A young boy tugged at his father's sleeve, whispering in awe, "Dad, look at his sword. It's like the ones from the stories you told me." The father nodded, explaining quietly how the claymore had once been the weapon of Highland warriors who defended their lands and honor with unwavering courage. The morning air grew warmer as the sun climbed higher, and the crowd at the gates swelled with each passing hour. William remained motionless, his eyes fixed straight ahead, embodying the unwavering spirit of the Highland Guard. Each guard who stood this post knew they weren't just security personnel, they were living links to Scotland's proud heritage, a responsibility that William and his fellow guards took to heart with solemn pride. Tour guides paused their groups near the entrance, explaining the significance of the Highland Guard tradition. "These guards," one guide explained to her attentive audience, "carry on a legacy that dates back to the 17th century. The claymore they bear isn't merely ceremonial, it's a symbol of honor, duty, and the warrior spirit that has protected these walls for generations." She went on to describe how the guards underwent months of rigorous training, not only in ceremonial duties, but in the history and traditions they were sworn to protect. The castle's massive stone walls seemed to breathe with centuries of history as the morning progressed. Seabirds wheeled overhead, their cries mixing with the murmur of conversations in dozens of languages. Local vendors began setting up their stalls along the royal mile below, preparing for the day's festival activities. The aroma of freshly baked shortbread and hot tea wafted up from the castle's courtyard cafe, where early visitors gathered to warm themselves against the crisp autumn air. As noon approached, a particularly large tour group made its way up the final steps to the castle entrance. William could hear their excited conversations in various accents: American, Australian, German, Japanese. all drawn to this ancient fortress for their own reasons. Some sought connection with their Scottish ancestry, others were history enthusiasts, and some were simply tourists checking off another site from their travel lists. Their cameras clicked and whirred, documenting every aspect of the historic scene before them. What no one could have predicted was that among these visitors was someone who would challenge centuries of tradition. Sarah Matthews, a self-proclaimed social media influencer from Los Angeles, was about to turn this ordinary festival day into a moment that would be remembered throughout Edinburgh for years to come. Her designer handbag swinging carelessly at her side, she emerged from the crowd, her eyes fixed not on the historic castle or its significance, but on the potential for what she called epic content. Her perfectly manicured nails tapped away at her phone's screen as she live-streamed her approach to her growing audience of followers. The stage was set for a clash between modern irreverence and ancient tradition, between superficial entertainment and deep-rooted honor. As William maintained his stoic pose, none of the gathered visitors realized they were about to witness a confrontation that would remind everyone of the true meaning of respect in an age of viral videos and fleeting fame. The ancient stones of Edinburgh Castle had seen countless moments of historical significance, but today they would bear witness to a very modern lesson in dignity and consequence. The festival crowds continued to grow as the afternoon sun cast long shadows across Edinburgh Castle's ancient courtyard. Families with children, history enthusiasts, and tourists of all nationalities mingled in the sprawling queue, their excited chatter echoing off the centuries-old stone walls. The atmosphere was festive yet respectful, as most visitors understood the profound historical significance of where they stood. Sarah Matthews, however, saw things differently. As she positioned herself strategically near the front of the crowd, her perfectly styled blonde hair catching the sunlight, she adjusted her designer sunglasses and spoke directly into her phone's camera. "Hey TikTok fam, your girl Sarah is coming to you live from this super cute castle in Scotland." She turned the camera to catch her best angle, her hot pink blazer standing out sharply against the castle's weathered gray stones. Her followers' comments began streaming in immediately. "Slay Queen! Love that blazer! Show us the guard!" Sarah's perfectly painted lips curled into a satisfied smile as she watched the viewer count climb. This was what she lived for: the attention, the instant gratification, the power to turn any moment into content for her growing social media empire. "Oh my God, you guys won't believe this," she continued, her voice rising above the respectful murmur of other visitors. "They've got these guards here dressed up like something out of Braveheart, like totally Instagram-worthy." She swung her camera toward William, who maintained his dignified stance, seemingly oblivious to her running commentary. A middle-aged couple from Aberdeen exchanged concerned glances as Sarah's voice grew louder. The husband, Duncan MacLeod, a retired history teacher who had brought his Canadian wife to experience the festival, leaned over and whispered, "That lass needs to show some respect. These guards aren't here for her entertainment." His wife nodded in agreement, watching with growing unease as Sarah continued her performance. Meanwhile, other tourists were experiencing the castle grounds as intended. A Japanese family quietly photographed the architectural details of the ancient gateway, while a German tour group listened intently to their guide's explanation of the Highland Guard's historical significance. An elderly Scottish woman wiped away tears as she told her grandchildren about their great-grandfather, who had served as a castle guard in the 1950s. But Sarah's live stream was creating its own reality, separate from the respectful atmosphere around her. "Watch this, you guys," she giggled into her phone. "I bet I can get this guard to crack a smile. Nobody can stay that serious forever, right?" Her followers' comments encouraged her. "Do it. Make him laugh. This is going to be epic." A young Scottish student named Hamish, who worked part-time as a tour guide, recognized the brewing situation. He'd seen similar incidents before, visitors who mistook solemn tradition for tourist entertainment. He stepped forward, clearing his throat. "Miss, perhaps you'd be interested in learning about the historical significance of the Highland Guard? They're not actually here for—" "Oh, honey, I know exactly what they're here for." Sarah cut him off, barely glancing in his direction. "Content creation. I mean, why else would they dress up like this if they didn't want attention?" She turned back to her phone. My followers are going to love this. We're about to make this guard famous. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. William MacPherson remained stoic, but his trained eye had already assessed the situation. In his 15 years of service, he'd developed an instinct for detecting trouble before it fully materialized. Though his expression remained neutral, his mind was alert, drawing on years of experience handling difficult situations with dignity and restraint. The crowd around Sarah had begun to thin slightly, as some visitors deliberately moved away from her disruptive presence. A group of local Scottish teenagers watched with evident embarrassment, one of them muttering under his breath, "Americans," though Sarah's behavior would have been considered inappropriate regardless of her nationality. "Okay, TikTok fam," Sarah announced, her voice taking on a conspiratorial tone. "Let's see if this sword is actually real. I mean, it's probably plastic, right? No way they'd let them have real swords just standing around." She adjusted her designer bag, its metal accents catching the sun as she prepared for what she thought would be her viral moment. An older guard named Ian, who had just finished his shift and was watching from nearby, shook his head slowly. He'd served alongside William for a decade and knew his colleague's unwavering dedication to duty. Ian could see what Sarah couldn't: the subtle tension in William's jaw, the slightly more focused gaze, the nearly imperceptible shift in his stance. These were the minute signs that telegraphed to those who knew. The Highland Guard was prepared for whatever challenge might come. The autumn wind picked up, carrying with it the distant sound of festival bagpipes. The ancient flags atop the castle walls snapped in the breeze, and clouds began gathering on the horizon. It was as if the very elements were responding to the tension building in the courtyard. The stage was set for a confrontation between the timeless values of respect and duty, and the modern appetite for viral fame at any cost. Sarah's followers continued to egg her on, their comments becoming increasingly bold. "Touch the sword. Make him move. This is going to blow up." Little did they know, they were about to witness something far more meaningful than the viral moment they craved. A lesson in respect that would resonate far beyond their fleeting social media feeds. Sarah's livestream viewer count had just hit 2,000 when she decided to escalate her performance. Adjusting her pink blazer and fluffing her hair, she sauntered closer to William's post, her phone held high to capture every moment. "Okay guys, watch this. I'm going to get a reaction from Mr. Serious here. No one can stay that stiff forever, right?" The historic stones of Edinburgh Castle had witnessed centuries of battles, but today's confrontation would be of a different sort, a clash between ancient dignity and modern disrespect. William remained motionless, his training evident in every line of his rigid posture, but his eyes registered each of Sarah's movements with practiced precision. "Hello? Anyone home?" Sarah waved her manicured hand in front of William's face, her chunky designer bracelets jingling. "I'm talking to you, soldier boy." The crowd's murmur grew more concerned, and several phones raised to record what was unfolding. A mother quietly ushered her children away from the scene, whispering explanations about respect and proper behavior. Duncan MacLeod, the retired history teacher, stepped forward again. "Young lady, that's quite enough. The Highland Guard is a centuries-old tradition, not a social media stunt." His wife tugged at his sleeve, trying to keep him from getting involved, but his face was flushed with indignation. Sarah spun around, her designer sunglasses perched on her head. "Excuse me? I paid good money to visit this tourist attraction, and I'm creating content for my followers. Don't you know how influencer marketing works?" She gestured dramatically with her phone. "I'm actually doing this place a favor. Do you know how many views this video is getting?" The young Scottish tour guide, Hamish, watched with growing concern. He'd spent years studying the castle's history, writing his university thesis on the Highland Guard tradition. Every fiber of his being wanted to intervene, but he knew protocol required letting the guard handle the situation. Still, he couldn't help muttering to nearby visitors, "That sword she's mocking? It's been passed down through generations of guards since 1745. Sarah's livestream comments were flooding in faster now. "OMG, this is hilarious. Make him smile. Touch the sword. You're gonna go viral. Emboldened by her growing audience, Sarah stepped even closer to William. The ancient cobblestones beneath her expensive heels had been worn smooth by centuries of footsteps, but she paid them no mind as she positioned herself for a better camera angle. Come on, everyone wants to see if that sword is real. I bet it's just a prop, right? Everything here is so staged. The afternoon sun caught the Claymore's polished blade, sending a flash of light across the courtyard. The sword's history was evident in its carefully maintained condition. Each guard took personal responsibility for preserving this piece of Scottish heritage. William's grip on the sword's hilt remained steady, but those who knew him well might have noticed the subtle tightening of his jaw. A group of Scottish schoolchildren on a field trip watched wide-eyed as their teacher whispered urgently into her phone, presumably calling castle security. The children, raised on stories of Highland honor and tradition, seemed to understand the gravity of the situation, better than the grown woman making a mockery of it. Hey TikTok fam, let's see what this guard does when I... Sarah's voice trailed off suggestively as she reached toward the Claymore. The crowd's reaction was immediate. Sharp intakes of breath, muttered protests, and the sound of more phones being activated to record whatever was about to happen. Ian, the older guard who had finished his shift, took an instinctive step forward but caught himself. He knew William would handle this according to protocol, but decades of protecting the castle's honor made it difficult to stand by and watch. The metal pins on his chest, medals earned through years of service, seemed to weigh heavier as he witnessed this disrespect to everything they represented. The gathering storm clouds cast shifting shadows across the castle grounds, and the wind carried snippets of Sarah's commentary to every corner of the courtyard. Tourist groups paused their tours to watch, guides falling silent mid-sentence. The usual festive atmosphere of the Highland Festival week had transformed into something tense and uncertain. "This is going to be epic," Sarah announced to her phone, her voice carrying across the now hushed courtyard. "Watch me make this guard break character." She was so focused on her live stream that she failed to notice the subtle shifts in the crowd around her. The disapproving looks, the protective stances of local visitors, the way other tourists distanced themselves from her behavior. The ancient castle walls had seen countless moments of courage, honor, and defiance. They had withstood siege engines and cannon fire, protected kings and repelled invaders. Now they stood witness to a different kind of battle, one between respect and irreverence, between duty and distraction, between timeless values and fleeting fame. As Sarah prepared for what she thought would be her viral moment, she remained oblivious to the fact that she was about to learn a lesson far more meaningful than any social media victory. The atmosphere in the castle courtyard had transformed from tourist excitement to tense anticipation. Sarah's live stream continued, her voice growing more theatrical with each passing moment. "Look at this, you guys. He's like a statue. But everyone has their breaking point, right?" Her perfectly manicured nails drummed against her phone case as she read encouraging comments from her viewers. 2 castle employees had appeared at the edges of the gathering crowd, speaking quietly into their radios. They dealt with disruptive visitors before, but something about Sarah's determination to create viral content made this situation particularly volatile. One of them, Mary Campbell, had worked at the castle for 20 years and could read the warning signs like a well-worn book. "Should we intervene now?" the younger employee whispered to Mary, his name badge identifying him as Craig Johnston. Mary shook her head slightly, her eyes fixed on William. "Watch his left hand," she murmured. "When a Highland Guard adjusts their grip like that, they're prepared for anything. He knows what he's doing." Sarah, oblivious to the subtle dynamics playing out around her, continued her performance. "Okay, serious question time," she announced to her phone, then turned to face William directly. "Do they make you wear that skirt thing all day? Isn't it, like, totally embarrassing?" She giggled, playing to her audience. "I mean, my followers need to know, are you wearing anything under there?" A collective gasp rose from the crowd. An elderly Scottish woman crossed herself and muttered something in Gaelic that made those around her nod in grave agreement. The disrespect toward the traditional Highland kilt, a symbol of Scottish culture and military pride, was beyond the pale. Duncan MacLeod, the retired history teacher, could no longer contain himself. That skirt thing, as you so ignorantly put it, is a Highland kilt. It's been worn by Scottish warriors for centuries with honor and— His wife grabbed his arm, pulling him back as Sarah spun around to face him. Oh my God, another history lesson? Sarah rolled her eyes dramatically for her live stream. This is supposed to be entertainment. Nobody cares about all that ancient stuff anymore. She turned back to her phone. Can you believe these people? They're acting like this is some sacred thing instead of a tourist attraction. The young tour guide, Hamish, watched as several international tourists in his group exchanged uncomfortable glances. A Japanese family bowed apologetically to no one in particular and quietly moved away from the scene. Even those who didn't fully understand the cultural significance could sense the wrongness of Sarah's behavior. William remained perfectly still, but those who knew the Highland Guard traditions could see the subtle signs of his heightened alertness. The way his boots were now perfectly aligned, the barely perceptible straightening of his already impeccable posture. These were the preparations of a man ready to defend not just his post, but centuries of tradition. Your followers might be interested to know, Hamish called out, unable to stay silent any longer, that the Claymore you're mocking was used to defend this very castle during the Jacobite Rising. It's not a prop. It's a piece of living history. Sarah barely glanced his way. Living history? Please. Everything here is just for show. Watch this. She stepped closer to William, her designer heels clicking against the ancient cobblestones. I bet if I just— She reached toward the sword again, this time coming within inches of its polished blade. The crowd's reaction was immediate and intense. Phones were raised higher, recording every moment. Parents pulled their children back, tour guides stopped mid-sentence, and even the seagulls wheeling overhead seemed to pause in their cries. The very air felt charged with tension. Ian, the off-duty guard, had positioned himself closer to the scene. His years of experience told him this situation was rapidly approaching a tipping point. He caught Mary Campbell's eye across the courtyard, and she nodded, her hand moving to her radio. They both knew that what happened in the next few moments would either defuse the situation or escalate it beyond control. Come on, Mr. Guard, Sarah taunted, her voice taking on a sing-song quality. Your sword is just a fancy toy, right, like everything else in this old castle? She turned to her live stream audience. What do you guys think? Should I touch it? Should I see if it's real? The comments streamed in faster. Do it! This is gonna be epic. You're so brave. Make him move. The autumn wind had picked up, sending leaves skittering across the courtyard. Dark clouds gathered overhead, as if nature itself was responding to the mounting tension. The castle flags snapped in the breeze, their crisp sound cutting through the murmur of the crowd. A young Scottish boy, no more than 7, tugged at his mother's sleeve and asked in a clear, carrying voice, Mum, why is that lady being so mean to the guard? The simple question, born of a child's innate sense of right and wrong, seemed to hang in the air, making several onlookers shift uncomfortably. Sarah's live stream counter had now reached 5,000 viewers, each one waiting to see what would happen next. But they, like Sarah herself, failed to understand that they weren't about to witness a viral moment of entertainment. They were about to see a demonstration of why some traditions endure, why some lines should never be crossed, and why respect, once lost, comes with consequences that no amount of social media fame can justify. The dark clouds overhead perfectly matched the mounting tension in Edinburgh Castle's ancient courtyard. Sarah's live stream had taken on a life of its own, with viewers now calling for increasingly bold actions. Her phone screen lit up with suggestions, each more outrageous than the last, fueling her determination to create what she called legendary content. Okay, TikTok fam, you won't believe what I'm about to do, Sarah announced, her voice carrying across the now hushed courtyard. She adjusted her designer sunglasses and fluffed her hair, playing to her growing audience. This guard thinks he's so special with his fancy sword and his little costume, but I'm about to show you it's all fake. Mary Campbell, the veteran castle employee, had quietly positioned herself near the emergency phone. 20 years of experience told her this situation was rapidly approaching a critical point. She'd seen countless tourists test boundaries before, But something about Sarah's desperate need for attention made this different, more dangerous. "Look at him standing there, trying to be all important," Sarah continued, circling William like a predator sizing up its prey. "I bet they don't even trust you with a real sword, do they? It's probably plastic, like everything else in this tourist trap." Her voice had taken on a sharp, mocking edge that made several nearby children shrink behind their parents. The young tour guide, Hamish, felt his hands trembling with suppressed anger. As a student of Scottish history, each of Sarah's words felt like a personal assault on centuries of tradition. He caught the eye of Duncan MacLeod, the retired history teacher, and saw his own outrage reflected there. But both men knew that intervening now could only make things worse. Sarah's livestream comments scrolled faster. "Show us the sword. Make him break character. This is better than Netflix. You're going viral." The gathering crowd had grown larger, drawn by the spectacle. But the atmosphere had shifted. What had started as tourist curiosity had transformed into something more uncomfortable. People spoke in whispers, their phones recording not for entertainment now, but as evidence of whatever was about to unfold. "Did you know," Sarah announced to her phone, her voice dripping with mockery, "that they probably bought this sword at a gift shop? I mean, look at it." She leaned in closer to William, her designer perfume clashing with the ancient stone's weathered scent. "It's not even sharp, is it? Just another fake thing in this fake castle?" Ian, the off-duty guard watching from nearby, felt his jaw clench. The Claymore Sarah was mocking had been used in actual combat during the Jacobite Rising. Its blade had been carefully maintained for generations, each guard taking personal responsibility for preserving this piece of living history. Every morning, the weapon was ceremonially cleaned and inspected, its edge kept as keen as the day it first saw battle. A group of local Scottish teenagers had stopped their casual banter, watching the scene with growing unease. One of them, a girl with fiery red hair, whispered to her friends, "My grandfather would be greeting to see this. He served as a guard here for 30 years. Her voice carried just far enough for Sarah to hear, but the influencer merely rolled her eyes. "Oh, please spare me the history lesson," Sarah shot back. "This is the 21st century. Nobody cares about your grandfather's costume party." The girl's face flushed red, but before she could respond, Sarah had already turned back to her live stream. "Watch this, everyone. I'm going to prove this is all fake." The wind had picked up considerably, sending Sarah's carefully styled hair into disarray. She paused to smooth it, complaining to her viewers about the terrible Scottish weather ruining her look. Behind her, William remained motionless, but those who knew what to look for could see the subtle signs of tension in his bearing. Mary Campbell's hand tightened on her radio as Sarah took another step closer to William. The sacred boundary line, marked by centuries of tradition more than any physical barrier, was about to be crossed. Around the courtyard, different groups reacted in their own ways. Tourists backed away, locals moved forward protectively, and children clutched their parents' hands tighter. "Time for the big reveal," Sarah announced, her voice rising to a theatrical pitch. "Let's see what happens when I—" She reached for the Claymore again, her manicured fingers extending toward its ancient blade. The crowd collectively held its breath, knowing they were witnessing something that would have consequences beyond Sarah's comprehension. The castle bells chose that moment to toll the hour, their deep resonance echoing off the stone walls. Each bronze note seemed to hang in the air, adding gravity to the moment. Sarah's live stream counter hit 10,000 viewers, all of them waiting to see what would happen next, none of them understanding the true significance of what they were about to witness. In that suspended moment, as Sarah's hand moved toward the sacred weapon, the very stones of Edinburgh Castle seemed to hold their breath. Centuries of history, tradition, and honor were about to collide with modern disrespect and the desperate search for viral fame. What happened next would become not just another social media moment, but a lesson that would echo through the ancient halls of the castle for years to come. Sarah's live stream had taken on a life of its own, spreading far beyond her usual following. Social media algorithms, sensing the brewing drama, pushed her video to viewers across the globe. Comments flooded in from America, Australia, Japan, and dozens of other countries, the tiny phone screen becoming a window through which the world watched this clash of values unfold at Edinburgh Castle. "This is getting way more views than my usual content," Sarah exclaimed, her voice pitched with excitement as she checked her metrics. "See? I told you guys this place needed someone to make it interesting." Her designer boots clicked against the ancient cobblestones as she positioned herself for what she thought would be her viral moment. The castle's security cameras swiveled silently to focus on the scene, their modern lenses capturing every detail of this confrontation between centuries of tradition and contemporary narcissism. In the security office, Supervisor Robert MacDonald watched the feeds with growing concern, his finger hovering over the direct line to Police Scotland. Local news had caught wind of the situation. A reporter from Edinburgh Evening News had arrived, keeping a respectful distance but taking notes on her tablet. The story was already spreading through local social media groups. Live, tourist harasses Highland Guard at Castle. Scottish Twitter was ablaze with angry comments, many in dialect so thick that international viewers struggled to understand the outrage being expressed. "Hey, we're trending," Sarah announced gleefully to her viewers, completely misreading the situation. "Look at these numbers. This is totally going to boost my sponsorship deals." She preened for her camera, adjusting her pink blazer and fluffing her hair, oblivious to the storm of criticism building online. The crowd in the courtyard had grown larger but changed in composition. Tourist groups had largely backed away, while more locals had arrived, drawn by urgent texts from friends and family. The atmosphere crackled with tension, like the air before a Highland thunderstorm. Hamish, the young tour guide, had been quietly translating the situation for his international visitors. "In our culture," he explained in careful Japanese to an elderly couple, "the Highland Guard represents centuries of tradition and sacrifice. What she's doing is more than disrespectful. It's an attack on our heritage." The couple nodded gravely, understanding transcending language barriers. Sarah's live stream comments had begun to shift. "This isn't funny anymore. Show some respect. You're embarrassing Americans. Someone stop her." But Sarah, focused only on the rising viewer count, ignored the changing sentiment. "Watch this, everyone. I'm about to make history," she declared, unaware of the bitter irony in her words. She raised her phone higher, making sure to capture both herself and William in frame. Around the courtyard, dozens of phones were recording, each capturing a different angle of the unfolding drama. Some filmed Sarah's increasingly erratic behavior, others focused on William's stoic presence, while still others captured the growing crowd's reactions. The incident was being documented from every possible perspective, ensuring that what happened next would be witnessed by thousands. Mary Campbell, still monitoring the situation, noticed something significant. The usual tourist chatter had completely ceased. The only sounds were the wind through the ancient battlements, the distant cry of seagulls, and Sarah's increasingly shrill commentary. The silence of the crowd spoke volumes about the gravity of the moment. 1,000,000 views, Sarah squealed, her voice echoing off the castle walls. "This is absolutely insane. Thank you guys so much for watching. Make sure to like and follow." She continued her standard social media spiel, seemingly unaware that she had become the subject of scorn rather than admiration. Duncan MacLeod, the retired history teacher, had been quietly filming everything on his own phone. "For the record," he murmured to his wife, "people need to see what happens when you disrespect tradition like this." His wife squeezed his hand, understanding that they were witnessing something that would be talked about in Edinburgh for years to come. The global reach of the incident continued to expand. Twitter users began sharing clips, Reddit threads sprang up analyzing the situation, and Scottish cultural preservation groups started sharing urgent posts about respect for traditional institutions. The incident was transforming from a simple act of disrespect into a viral moment that would spark discussions about cultural sensitivity in the digital age. Sarah's original livestream title, "Making This Guard Break Character," had been clipped, shared, and reposted countless times, each with increasingly critical comments. The hashtag #Edinburgh Guard was trending in several countries, though not for the reasons Sarah had hoped. The court of public opinion was already in session, and its verdict was becoming clear. As the autumn sun dipped lower in the sky, casting long shadows across the courtyard, the scene was set for a moment that would be replayed, analyzed, and discussed across the globe. Sarah, still playing to her audience, remained oblivious to the fact that she was about to become famous for all the wrong reasons. The digital world held its breath, waiting to see how this clash between ancient honor and modern disrespect would resolve itself. The ancient stones of Edinburgh Castle had witnessed countless moments of historical significance over the centuries, but what was about to unfold would be remembered as a distinctly modern confrontation. Sarah, emboldened by her surging viewer count and desperate to maintain momentum, decided to push the boundaries even further. Okay, TikTok fam, this is it. The moment you've all been waiting for. She adjusted her phone to the perfect angle, her designer rings catching the fading sunlight. We're going to prove once and for all that this whole thing is just an act. Her voice had taken on a slightly manic quality, the pressure of performing for her growing audience evident in her increasingly erratic movements. The castle's security team had positioned additional staff around the perimeter of the scene. Mary Campbell's hand remained steady on her radio as she exchanged knowing glances with her colleagues. They'd dealt with difficult tourists before, but something about Sarah's desperate need for attention made this situation particularly volatile. "Watch this," Sarah announced to her livestream audience, which had now swelled to over 2 million viewers. "I'm going to show you guys what this sword is really made of." She reached into her expensive handbag and pulled out a small metal nail file, its surface glinting ominously in the afternoon light. A collective gasp rippled through the crowd. The implications were clear. She intended to test the Claymore's authenticity by scratching it. Duncan MacLeod, the retired history teacher, actually took a step forward before his wife pulled him back. "She can't be serious," he whispered, his face pale with shock. "That sword has been here since the Jacobite Rising." William remained motionless, but those who knew the Highland Guard traditions could see the subtle shift in his stance. His eyes, previously fixed straight ahead, now tracked Sarah's every movement with laser focus. The ancient sword at his side, passed down through generations of guards, seemed to hum with tension. Sarah's livestream comments exploded. "Don't do it! This has gone too far! Someone stop her! You're going to get arrested!" But Sarah, caught up in her performance, ignored the warnings. "Come on, guys, don't you want to see what happens?" She waved the nail file dramatically, playing to her audience. "I bet it'll leave a mark if it's real. Or maybe it'll just scratch right through the plastic." The young tour guide, Hamish, had stopped translating for his international group. His hands were trembling as he watched the scene unfold. Behind him, the Japanese elderly couple crossed their arms in an X shape, a universal signal of disapproval that needed no translation. The wind had picked up significantly, whipping Sarah's carefully styled hair into disarray. The castle flag snapped sharply overhead, and dark clouds continued to gather, as if nature itself was responding to the mounting tension. A few drops of rain began to fall, pattering against the ancient cobblestones. "This is getting out of hand," Ian, the off-duty guard, muttered to Mary Campbell. "That Claymore isn't just a symbol, it's a registered historical artifact. What she's planning could cause irreparable damage." Mary nodded grimly, her finger hovering over her radio's call button. Sarah took another step closer to William, holding up her nail file like a trophy. "Time to expose this fake tourist attraction for what it really is," she declared, her voice carrying across the now silent courtyard. The only sounds were the wind, the patter of raindrops, and the sharp intake of breath from dozens of onlookers. The local teenagers who had been watching the scene unfold had started a live stream of their own, providing running commentary in broad Scottish accents. "She's about to learn why you don't mess with the Highland Guard," one of them whispered to their viewers. Their stream was quickly gaining traction, offering a local perspective on the unfolding drama. "This is going to be epic," Sarah announced, taking another step forward. She was now well beyond the designated boundary line, her designer boots scuffing against the worn stone that marked the limit of public access. The nail file in her hand caught the light as she raised it, her intention clear to everyone watching. William's expression hadn't changed, but something in the air had shifted. The centuries of tradition he represented seemed to coalesce around him like an invisible shield. The Claymore at his side, which had defended the castle through countless battles and sieges, waited silently for what would come next. The crowd held its collective breath. Phones were raised higher, recording from every angle. The incident was being documented in real time, spreading across social media platforms faster than anyone could track. What happened in the next few moments would be analyzed, shared, and discussed around the world. Sarah, oblivious to the gravity of her actions, took one final step forward. "Let's see what this guard does when I—" Her words were cut off by the sound of the castle bells tolling the hour, their deep resonance seeming to mark the point of no return. She had crossed more than just a physical boundary. She had crossed a line that would lead to consequences she couldn't yet imagine. Part 8. The breaking point. Time seemed to freeze in Edinburgh Castle's ancient courtyard as Sarah's nail file hovered inches from the Claymore's polished surface. The collective intake of breath from the crowd created a moment of absolute silence, broken only by the soft patter of raindrops on centuries-old stone. "This is it, guys." Sarah's voice trembled with excitement as she narrated for her livestream. "We're about to expose this whole thing." Her perfectly manicured hand moved closer to the historic blade, the metal nail file catching the dim light filtering through the gathering storm clouds. What happened next occurred so swiftly that many viewers would later need to watch their recordings in slow motion to fully comprehend it. In one fluid motion, precise as clockwork and smooth as flowing water, William took a single step sideways. The movement was so controlled, so deliberate, that it seemed almost casual, yet it placed the sacred Claymore just beyond Sarah's reach. The crowd's reaction was immediate. A ripple of whispers spread through the gathering, phones adjusted to capture this unexpected development, and Sarah herself froze mid-motion, her confidence visibly shaken for the first time. "Stand back from the sword, madam." William's voice, when it finally came, carried the weight of centuries. It was neither loud nor angry, but it filled the courtyard with an authority that made several onlookers straighten their posture instinctively. The Highland Guard's first words had shattered the illusion of him being merely a tourist attraction. Sarah's live stream exploded with comments. "OMG, he spoke. That voice. She's in trouble now. This is better than any movie." But Sarah, caught off guard by this break in character, quickly tried to regain control of the situation. "Oh, so you can talk," she said with forced bravado, adjusting her designer sunglasses. "Nice accent. Very authentic. Did they train you to sound Scottish, or are you actually—" "This is your final warning." William's interruption was calm, but carried an edge sharp as the blade he protected. "You will step back from the Claymore, or you will be removed from the castle grounds." Each word was delivered with the precision of a military command, his eyes now fixed directly on Sarah. The rain had begun to fall more steadily, creating a misty veil around the scene. Mary Campbell and her security team had moved closer, their faces set with grim determination. The local teenagers' livestream commentary had fallen silent, their usual bravado replaced by tense anticipation. "Or what?" Sarah challenged, though her voice had lost some of its earlier confidence. "What are you going to do? This is the 21st century. You can't just—" "This sword," William's voice cut through her protests like a blade through mist, "has defended this castle since before your great-great-grandparents were born. It has seen more history than your social media will ever understand. And you?" He paused, his gaze unwavering. "You will not be the one to dishonor it." The crowd had grown absolutely still. Even the most casual tourists could sense that they were witnessing something extraordinary, a moment where centuries of tradition stood firm against modern disrespect. Duncan MacLeod, the retired history teacher, was nodding slowly, tears gathering in his eyes. Sarah's phone trembled slightly in her hand as she struggled to maintain her composure. "You're just a guy in a costume," she insisted, but her words sounded hollow even to her own ears. "This is just a tourist attraction. I have rights." "Rights," William responded, his voice carrying across the courtyard. "Come with responsibilities. And chief among them is respect for the history and traditions you choose to visit." The rain continued to fall, but no one in the crowd moved to seek shelter. The moment held them transfixed. The castle bells tolled again, their deep resonance seeming to emphasize William's words. Sarah's live stream had reached 3 million viewers, but the comments had shifted dramatically. She needs to back off. That guard is legendary. Show some respect. This isn't going to end well for her. Sarah's carefully crafted social media persona was crumbling in real time. Her hand holding the nail file had dropped to her side, but her desperate need for attention drove her to make one final attempt. Well, my followers want to see something interesting, and I'm going to give them what they... Before she could finish her sentence, William executed another precise movement. This time, it was a quarter turn that positioned him between Sarah and the historic weapon. The motion was so smooth, so professional, that it made Sarah's theatrical performance look even more childish in comparison. The contrast was stark. Ancient dignity versus modern desperation, timeless tradition facing off against fleeting fame. The raindrops caught the last rays of sunlight breaking through the clouds, creating a momentary halo effect around William's tall bearskin hat, as if history itself was crowning its defender. The courtyard held its breath, waiting to see how Sarah would respond to this clear demonstration of authority. The moment hung in the air like the mist, pregnant with possibility, as two worlds continued their collision course at the heart of Edinburgh Castle. The rain had intensified, but no one in Edinburgh Castle's courtyard moved. Sarah stood frozen, her designer clothes growing increasingly damp, as the reality of her situation began to sink in. Her phone screen continued to light up with notifications, but the tone of the comments had shifted dramatically. "This isn't what she began, her voice having lost its earlier bravado. The nail file in her hand suddenly felt heavy with the weight of her poor decisions. Her live stream viewers watched as her carefully constructed persona began to crumble in real time. William's next words carried across the courtyard with measured precision. "Throughout history," he began, his voice steady and clear despite the rainfall, "this castle has faced many who sought to diminish its dignity. None have succeeded." His gaze remained fixed on Sarah, but his words seemed to resonate with everyone present. The gathered crowd had grown larger despite the weather. Local news reporters had arrived, their cameras capturing the scene from multiple angles. An Edinburgh Evening News journalist was already typing furiously on her tablet, the headline practically writing itself. "Highland Guard stands firm against social media stunt." Mary Campbell stepped forward from her position near the security office, her decades of experience evident in her commanding presence. "Castle security has been notified," she announced clearly. "Police Scotland is en route." The statement hung in the rain-filled air, adding another layer of gravity to the situation. Sarah's live stream comments continued their brutal shift. "You messed with the wrong guard. This is so embarrassing to watch. She's about to get arrested on live stream. Instant karma." The young tour guide Hamish had begun quietly translating the unfolding events for his international group. "This is unprecedented," he explained in hushed tones. "The Highland Guard rarely breaks protocol, but when they do..." He didn't need to finish the sentence. The gravity of the situation was universal. Sarah's phone suddenly slipped in her rain-dampened grip, nearly clattering to the ancient cobblestones. As she fumbled to secure it, her carefully applied makeup began to run, dark streaks appearing on her cheeks. The contrast between her earlier confidence and current dishevelment was stark. "I have millions of followers," she attempted weakly, her voice lacking its previous theatrical flair. "They'll hear about how you treated me and..." "Yes," William interrupted, his tone unchanged. "They will hear about how the Highland Guard upholds its sacred duty, regardless of who challenges it." The rain seemed to emphasize his words, each droplet striking the cobblestones like punctuation marks in history. The local teenagers who had been streaming the event had gained hundreds of thousands of viewers of their own. Their commentary, rich with Scottish dialect, provided a running narrative that resonated with audiences worldwide. "See what happens when ye disrespect our heritage? The Guard doesn't bend for anyone." Duncan MacLeod, the retired history teacher, spoke up from the crowd, his voice thick with emotion. "In all my years of teaching Scottish history, I've never seen a clearer example of why these traditions matter. His wife squeezed his hand, understanding the significance of what they were witnessing. The sound of approaching sirens began to echo off the castle walls, their modern wail a stark contrast to the ancient setting. Sarah's face paled as the reality of her situation finally seemed to dawn on her. The nail file slipped from her fingers, clattering against the wet stones with a sound that seemed to echo her falling social media aspirations. "But I was just trying to make content," she protested weakly, her voice barely carrying over the rain. "It was just supposed to be entertaining." The words sounded hollow even to her own ears, like a child's excuse in the face of adult consequences. William's response was measured but firm. "Entertainment does not justify disrespect. Content does not outweigh heritage. Some things, madam, are beyond your right to mock." Each sentence landed with the weight of centuries behind it. The crowd had begun to murmur in agreement, many nodding at William's words. Phones remained raised, recording every moment, but now they captured something different. Not the spectacle Sarah had intended, but a lesson in respect being taught in real time. 2 Police Scotland officers appeared at the courtyard entrance, their fluorescent yellow jackets visible through the rain. Mary Campbell was already moving to meet them, tablet in hand, ready to show them the security footage of Sarah's actions. Sarah's live stream counter still showed millions of viewers, but now they were watching for a different reason. They weren't waiting for her to create viral content. They were waiting to see justice served. The comments continued to flood in. "This is what accountability looks like. History, 1. Influencer, 0. She's about to learn actions have consequences." The rain continued to fall on Edinburgh Castle's ancient stones, which had witnessed countless moments of triumph and defeat over the centuries. Today they were witness to another kind of victory, not one won with swords or siege engines, but with dignity and unwavering principle. The arrival of Police Scotland officers transformed the atmosphere in Edinburgh Castle's rain-soaked courtyard. Their presence made the situation's gravity impossible for Sarah to ignore any longer. Her phone, still live streaming, captured every moment of her dawning realization that her actions would have real consequences. "Ma'am," the senior officer addressed Sarah, his Edinburgh accent clipped and professional. "We've received reports of attempted vandalism of a protected historical artifact." He gestured to the Claymore that William still guarded with unwavering vigilance. "We'll need you to come with us." Sarah's live stream viewers watched as their influencer's carefully constructed world crumbled. "But I didn't actually damage anything," she protested, her voice rising with panic. "It was just content, just a video for my followers." The rain had completely ruined her expensive makeup, dark streaks running down her cheeks. Mary Campbell stepped forward, her tablet protected from the rain by a plastic sleeve. "We have multiple video angles of you attempting to interfere with a Class A protected historical artifact," she stated firmly. "The Claymore is registered under the Ancient Monuments and Archaeological Areas Act. This isn't about social media content anymore." The crowd had grown even larger despite the weather, word spreading through the Royal Mile that something unprecedented was happening at the castle. Local residents mixed with tourists, all watching as justice unfolded before them. Many had their phones out, but the atmosphere had changed from entertainment to documentation. "Did you know?" Hamish spoke up, his voice carrying clearly, "that damaging or attempting to damage historical artifacts can carry a penalty of up to £50,000. His tour group murmured in various languages, the significance of the amount requiring no translation. Sarah's face paled visibly at the mention of potential consequences. Duncan MacLeod couldn't contain himself any longer. "This sword," he called out, his teacher's instinct taking over, "has been part of the Highland Guard tradition for over 270 years. It's not just a prop for your social media games." Several people in the crowd nodded in agreement, some applauding his words. Sarah's live stream comments had become merciless. "Actions have consequences. This is better than any reality TV show. From influencer to defendant real quick. History wins again." The younger police officer had begun taking statements from witnesses, his notebook getting slightly damp in the persistent rain. The local teenagers who had been streaming the event were eager to share their footage, their earlier commentary now valuable evidence of what had transpired. "Your phone, please, ma'am," the senior officer requested, extending his hand toward Sarah. "We'll need it as evidence." Sarah clutched her device tighter, suddenly realizing that her live stream was about to end in a way she'd never anticipated. "But my followers," she began weakly, looking around for support she wouldn't find. The officer's expression remained professionally neutral, but firm. With trembling fingers, Sarah finally ended her live stream, the last frame capturing her tears mixing with the rain. William maintained his position, as steady as the castle walls themselves. His only movement was a slight adjustment of his bearskin hat against the rain, the action executed with the same precision that had characterized his entire response to the incident. The news crews that had gathered began their live reports, their cameras capturing the scene as Sarah was escorted toward the castle gates. "In an unprecedented incident at Edinburgh Castle," one reporter began, "a social media influencer learned the hard way that Scottish heritage is not a prop for viral content." Mary Campbell was already coordinating with the castle's PR team, knowing this incident would require careful handling. "The Highland Guard's response will be documented in our training materials," she told her colleagues. "This is how we preserve our heritage in the digital age." The crowd's reaction was captured by dozens of phones as Sarah was led away. Some cheered, others simply nodded in satisfaction. But the overwhelming sentiment was one of justice being served. The local teenager's live stream caught the moment perfectly, and that's what happens when you mess with Scottish history. Ian, the off-duty guard who had witnessed everything, approached William with quiet respect. No words were needed between them, just a subtle nod of acknowledgement. The Claymore had been defended, not with force, but with the quiet dignity that had characterized the Highland Guard for generations. The rain began to ease, and rays of late-afternoon sun broke through the clouds, creating a gleaming effect on the wet cobblestones. Tourists who had witnessed the event were already sharing their videos and photos across social media platforms, but now with captions that spoke of respect, tradition, and consequences. As Sarah disappeared through the castle gates, her designer clothes soaked, and her social media dreams in shambles, William resumed his stoic vigil. The incident would soon become part of Edinburgh Castle's modern folklore, a tale of how ancient traditions stood firm against the tide of viral fame-seeking. The castle bells tolled again, their deep resonance seeming to signal the return to normal order. But everyone present knew they had witnessed something extraordinary, a moment where the old world had taught the new one a lasting lesson about respect, dignity, and the enduring power of tradition. The hours following Sarah's removal from Edinburgh Castle brought a flurry of activity that rippled far beyond the ancient fortress walls. Inside the castle's administrative offices, Mary Campbell and her team were dealing with an unprecedented surge of media inquiries, while social media platforms exploded with discussions about respect, tradition, and the consequences of viral fame-seeking. "The incident has already been viewed over 20 million times," reported one of the castle's social media coordinators, scrolling through various platforms on multiple screens. Hashtags like Twair Highland Guardian and Twair Edinburgh Honour were trending worldwide, with the original footage being shared and commented on in dozens of languages. The castle's press office had released an official statement. "Edinburgh Castle takes the protection of our historical artifacts and traditions seriously. Today's incident demonstrates our unwavering commitment to preserving Scottish heritage. The Highland Guard acted in accordance with their sworn duty, and we fully support their actions." In the security office, Police Scotland officers were reviewing the extensive footage from multiple angles. "Look at the precision of his movement," remarked Detective Inspector Ross, studying William's response. "Minimal force, maximum effect. Textbook handling of a volatile situation." His colleagues nodded in agreement, making notes for what would undoubtedly become a training case study. Sarah's story was unfolding differently at the local police station. Seated in an interview room, her designer clothes still damp from the rain, she faced the consequences of her actions. "Do you understand the seriousness of attempting to vandalize a protected historical artifact?" the interviewing officer asked, his tone professional but stern. Meanwhile, back at the castle, William had been relieved of his post by the next guard in rotation, the ceremonial handover executed with perfect precision despite the day's events. As he made his way to the guard room, various castle staff members nodded respectfully, some even breaking protocol to murmur words of appreciation. The tourist groups who had witnessed the incident were still processing what they'd seen. The Japanese elderly couple approached Hamish, the tour guide, and bowed deeply. "Please tell the guard," they said through their translator app, "that we understand now. The sword is not just metal, it is honor made visible." Duncan MacLeod, the retired history teacher, had remained at the castle to give a statement to the police. "In 30 years of teaching Scottish history," he told the officer, "I've never seen a clearer example of why we preserve these traditions. That young guard did more for education today than 1,000 textbooks could." Social media analysts were having a field day with the incident. One viral tweet read, "Influencer learns the hard way that some things can't be reduced to content." Another popular post showed a side-by-side comparison, William's dignified stance versus Sarah's increasingly desperate attempts to create viral content. The local teenagers who had streamed the event were being interviewed by a Scottish news channel. "It was like watching history stand up for itself," said the girl with red hair, her accent thick with emotion. "My granddad would have been proud to see the guard defend our heritage like that." In the castle's artifact preservation room, experts were carefully examining the Claymore, though they knew William had prevented any damage. "This sword," the head conservator explained to his assistant, "has now added another chapter to its history, not of battle but of standing firm against a different kind of threat." The rain had finally stopped, and the late afternoon sun cast long shadows across the courtyard where the incident had taken place. Tourists were already taking photos with the new guard, but there was a noticeable difference in their behavior. More respectful, more aware of the tradition they were witnessing. Mary Campbell's phone hadn't stopped ringing. Heritage organizations from around the world were calling, seeking advice on handling similar situations. "The digital age brings new challenges to preserving tradition," she explained to one caller. "Today showed that dignity and respect can still prevail." Outside the castle, souvenir shop owners along the Royal Mile reported a sudden surge in interest in Highland Guard merchandise. But more significantly, they noticed tourists asking more questions about the history and meaning behind the tradition, rather than just seeking photos. The incident had sparked a broader discussion about respect for cultural heritage in the age of social media. Online forums were filled with debates about the balance between preservation and accessibility, tradition and entertainment, respect and viral fame. As the sun began to set over Edinburgh, casting a golden glow on the castle's ancient stones, William finally finished filing his incident report. His handwriting was as precise as his actions had been, each word carefully chosen to document what would become a significant moment in the castle's long history. The day's events had demonstrated something profound. In an age of instant fame and viral moments, centuries-old traditions could still command respect. The Highland Guard had shown that true authority comes not from force, but from unwavering dedication to principle and dignity. The next morning dawned clear and bright over Edinburgh, but the digital storm showed no signs of abating. Sarah's attempted stunt had become the focal point of a global conversation about social media culture and respect for tradition. Her video, though deleted from her own accounts, had been preserved and shared countless times, becoming what one news outlet called a defining moment in the clash between digital culture and historical heritage. At the police station, Sarah faced the formal consequences of her actions. "Miss Matthews," the investigating officer began, reviewing the charge sheet, "you're being charged with attempted vandalism of a protected historical artifact, disorderly conduct at a heritage site, and violation of posted security restrictions." The reality of her situation was finally sinking in, her social media persona stripped away by the cold facts of law. The incident had sparked a fierce debate online. Major news networks picked up the story, their headlines reflecting the public's verdict. Influencer's castle confrontation backfires spectacularly. Highland Guard's dignity triumphs over social media stunt. Viral fame seeker learns costly lesson in respect. Sarah's social media empire was crumbling in real time. Brand partnerships began sending termination notices, her follower count dropped dramatically, and her inbox filled with messages from former supporters expressing their disappointment. One major fashion brand issued a public statement. "We cannot continue our relationship with individuals who disrespect cultural heritage for views." Meanwhile, William had become an unlikely internet hero. A photo of him standing guard, perfectly composed despite Sarah's provocations, had gone viral for all the right reasons. Memes celebrating his stoic defense of tradition spread across platforms, with captions like "Dignity 1, Disrespect 0, and "When centuries of tradition meet minutes of fame." The castle's PR team was working overtime to handle media requests. "We've received interview requests from every major network," Mary Campbell told her staff during their morning briefing. "But William and the Highland Guard will not be participating. Their dignity speaks louder than any interview could." Tourism experts noted an interesting trend in the aftermath. Castle bookings had surged, but with a difference. "People aren't just coming to take photos," explained the head of Scottish Heritage Tourism. "They're booking historical tours, asking about the Guard's traditions, showing genuine interest in understanding our culture." The local teenagers who had live-streamed the incident found their commentary being used in unexpected ways. Educational institutions were requesting permission to use their footage in courses about social media responsibility and cultural respect. Their authentic reactions and obvious pride in their heritage had struck a chord with viewers worldwide. Sarah's phone, returned to her after evidence was documented, displayed a harsh new reality. Her once profitable social media accounts were flooded with comments. "This is what happens when you disrespect history. You can't buy class with designer clothes. Some traditions deserve more than your content." Professional social media analysts began publishing case studies about the incident. "What we witnessed," wrote one expert, "was the moment when viral fame met immovable dignity. The Highland Guard demonstrated that some things cannot and should not be reduced to content." In Edinburgh's coffee shops and pubs, locals discussed the event with a mixture of pride and satisfaction. "Did you see how he handled it?" one elderly man asked his companions. "Not a word wasted, not a movement out of place. That's what we call proper Scottish dignity." The castle gift shop reported an unexpected trend. Visitors were buying books about Highland Guard history, rather than just souvenir photographs. "They want to understand," the shop manager explained to a reporter. "Yesterday's incident made them realize there's more here than just a photo opportunity." Legal experts appeared on news programs, explaining the seriousness of Sarah's actions. "Attempting to vandalize a registered historical artifact carries severe penalties," one barrister detailed. "This isn't just about social media anymore. This is about preserving our national heritage." William's fellow guards treated him with quiet respect, though he had simply done what any of them would have done. During the changing of the guard ceremony, tourists noticed that each guard's salute seemed especially crisp, their movements even more precise than usual, a subtle show of solidarity with their colleague. The castle's security team had begun updating their training protocols. "The incident will be used as a case study," Mary Campbell announced. "It's a perfect example of how to maintain dignity and protect tradition in the face of modern challenges." As evening approached, a different kind of viral content emerged. Thoughtful posts about the importance of cultural respect, discussions about the real value of tradition, and reflections on the price of instant fame. The incident had sparked something deeper than just another viral moment. It had become a catalyst for genuine cultural dialogue. 1 week after the incident at Edinburgh Castle, its impact continued to resonate far beyond the ancient fortress walls. The video of William's dignified response had become a cultural touchstone, used in presentations about professional conduct, featured in educational materials about cultural preservation, and cited in discussions about the clash between tradition and modern media culture. Sarah's legal troubles had taken an unexpected turn. The court had offered her an alternative to the hefty fine. She could participate in a cultural heritage preservation program, working alongside conservators to understand the value of what she had nearly damaged. "It's not about punishment," the magistrate explained. "It's about understanding." The Highland Guard had received letters of support from military and ceremonial units worldwide. "Your demonstration of restraint and dignity," wrote the captain of the Queen's Guard at Buckingham Palace, "reminds us all that our duties go beyond mere ceremony. We protect not just places and objects, but the very essence of our cultural heritage." William's return to regular duty was marked by subtle but significant changes. Tourists still took photos, but now they maintained a respectful distance, often pausing to read the newly installed plaques explaining the Highland Guard's history and significance. The line marking the restricted area had been repainted, its bright white surface a clear reminder of boundaries both physical and cultural. Mary Campbell had been invited to speak at an international conference on heritage site management. What happened that day, she told the assembled experts, wasn't just about stopping potential vandalism. It was about standing firm when tradition meets the challenges of the digital age. The local teenagers who had live-streamed the event found themselves in an unexpected position. Their commentary, rich with Scottish pride and authentic reaction, had become part of a documentary about social media's impact on cultural sites. "We didn't plan to be part of history," the red-haired girl explained to the filmmaker. "But sometimes you have to stand up and say what's right." Tourism at the castle had evolved in noticeable ways. The gift shop now featured a new display about the Highland Guard tradition, complete with a respectful explanation of the Claymore's significance. "Visitors aren't just buying trinkets anymore," the shop manager reported. "They're purchasing books about Scottish military history and asking meaningful questions." In the digital realm, Sarah's story had become a cautionary tale. Social media consultants used it in workshops about responsible content creation. "Going viral isn't always the goal," one expert explained to her clients. "Sometimes the most powerful content is about showing respect rather than seeking attention." The castle's security team had implemented new training protocols inspired by William's response. "Notice how he never lost composure," the trainer pointed out during a staff session. "His dignity became a shield more effective than any physical barrier." Duncan MacLeod, the retired history teacher, had been invited to local schools to discuss the incident. "What you witnessed," he told students, "was more than just a viral moment. It was a demonstration of why we preserve traditions, not because they're old, but because they remind us of who we are and what we stand for." The Claymore itself had gained new significance. Conservators noted increased interest in its history, with scholars requesting access to study not just the weapon, but the traditions surrounding its protection. "Every scratch and mark tells a story," the head conservator explained during a documentary interview. "Now it has one more tale to tell, about standing firm in the face of disrespect." International heritage sites had begun reviewing their own policies in light of the incident. The Edinburgh Protocol, as some were calling it, emphasized dignity over confrontation, tradition over temporary disruption. Security teams from historic sites worldwide requested copies of the Highland Guard's training materials. The castle's daily ceremonies took on deeper meaning for visitors. Tour guides reported increased attention during explanations of military traditions. "People understand now," Hamish noted during one of his tours, "that these ceremonies aren't performances, they're living links to our past." Even the weather seemed to acknowledge the change. On particularly clear days, the sun would catch the Claymore's polished surface, creating what visitors called the Guardian's Gleam, a reminder of the light of tradition cutting through the fog of modern distraction. Social media platforms had seen a shift in content from Edinburgh Castle. Instead of superficial selfies, visitors shared thoughtful posts about history and tradition. The hashtag #Guardian of Heritage had become a symbol for respectful tourism worldwide. As autumn deepened in Edinburgh, the incident became part of the castle's rich tapestry of tales. Tour guides included it in their stories, not as a moment of conflict, but as an example of tradition's quiet strength in the modern world. The Highland Guard's dignity had proven more powerful than any viral trend, more lasting than any fleeting moment of fame. 1 month after the incident that shook Edinburgh Castle, The story's ripple effects continued to shape conversations about tradition, respect, and the price of viral fame. The autumn leaves had turned golden in the castle gardens, but the impact of that rainy afternoon remained as fresh as ever in the public consciousness. Sarah's journey had taken an unexpected turn. After completing her mandatory cultural heritage program, she posted her first social media content in weeks, a lengthy, heartfelt apology video filmed outside the castle gates. "I thought traditions were just for show," she admitted, her designer clothes replaced by modest attire. "I've learned that some things are preserved not because they're old, but because they're timeless." The video went viral, but for entirely different reasons than her previous content. Comments flooded in. "Now this is real content, character development at its finest." Sometimes the best influences come from being humbled. Growth is admitting when you were wrong. William had maintained his usual stoic presence at his post, but his example had inspired changes throughout the heritage tourism industry. Sites across Europe reported a marked decrease in disruptive behavior as visitors internalized the lesson from Edinburgh. "The Highland Guard showed us," wrote one tourism expert, "that dignity doesn't need to shout to be heard." The castle's gift shop had created a special display featuring the incident. A photograph of William standing guard was accompanied by a simple caption, "Tradition stands firm." Below it, visitors could read about the Highland Guard's history and the significance of their role in preserving Scottish heritage. Mary Campbell had finished compiling her report on the incident for the Scottish Heritage Trust. "What we witnessed," she wrote in the conclusion, "was more than just a clash between old and new. It was a reminder that some values, respect, dignity, duty, never go out of style." The local teenagers who had live-streamed the event had become unexpected ambassadors for cultural respect. Schools invited them to speak about responsible social media use and the importance of understanding traditions. "We didn't just record history that day," the red-haired girl told one class. "We learned why it matters." Tourism at Edinburgh Castle had evolved. Visitors now approached the Highland Guard with notable respect, often stopping to read about the tradition before taking photos. Tour guides reported increased interest in the deeper aspects of castle history, moving beyond surface-level attraction to genuine cultural appreciation. Duncan MacLeod, the retired history teacher, had written an article for an educational journal about the incident. "In an age where everything is content," he wrote, "we witnessed a moment when content became conscience. The Guard's dignity proved stronger than any viral trend." The Claymore itself had been officially recognized with an enhanced historical status. A new plaque beside the Guard's post detailed not just its military history, but also its recent role in demonstrating the enduring power of tradition. Visitors often paused to read the full text, understanding that they were seeing more than just a ceremonial weapon. International media continued to reference the incident in discussions about social media culture. The Edinburgh moment, as it had come to be known, was cited as a turning point in how people approached heritage sites. "Sometimes it takes a viral video to remind us why some things shouldn't go viral," observed one cultural commentator. Sarah's nail file, preserved as evidence, had been added to the castle's modern history exhibit, alongside a thoughtful explanation of the incident. "This simple object," the description read, "helped demonstrate that tradition's greatest strength lies not in resisting change, but in showing why some things remain worthy of respect." The castle's daily ceremonies had taken on new significance. Visitors watched the changing of the Guard with renewed appreciation, understanding that they were witnessing not just a tourist attraction, but a living link to centuries of tradition. The silence during these ceremonies was no longer merely polite. It was respectful. As winter approached, Edinburgh Castle stood as it had for centuries, its ancient stones holding countless stories. But now it held one more. A tale not of battles or royalty, but of how dignity and tradition stood firm in the face of modern disrespect. The lesson proved as enduring as the castle itself, that true authority comes not from seeking attention, but from standing steadfast in one's duty. William continued his guard duties, unchanged by his brush with viral fame. His example had shown that in a world obsessed with the temporary, some things remain permanent. The Highland Guard's unwavering dedication to tradition had demonstrated that true influence doesn't come from followers or likes, but from the quiet strength of standing firm for what matters. The story of the Guard and the influencer became more than just a viral moment. It became a parable for our times, a reminder that in the clash between fleeting fame and timeless tradition, dignity would always stand unbowed. The ancient stones of Edinburgh Castle had witnessed countless moments of history, but few had resonated as powerfully with the modern world as this simple demonstration of unwavering honor. Up next, you've got two more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.